Hi, my name is Niamh O'Connor and you're watching Talk of the Town. I'm here with Inspector Stephen Porciello, who is the School Resource Officer here in Arlington, as well as Sheridan Curran, who is the Court and Home Liaison of Arlington Public Schools, as well as the Diversion Coordinator of the town of Arlington. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
So I guess we should start with maybe talking about the diversion program and the history of that, if either one of you want to speak to that.
So about 12 years ago, at the formation of the Arlington Youth Health and Safety Coalition, Chief Ryan was talking about the need for better tools to deal with juvenile delinquency in our town, and specifically to address some of the substance use issues that he saw emerging. So he talked about diversion and he talked about restorative justice. At the time, there was no diversion program at the district attorney's office level, so we started our own local diversion program. And it's a holistic approach to taking a closer look at the behaviors that gave rise to the delinquent behavior. So it involves many things, but before we get there, we need to get the police on board. So fortunately, I'm partnered with a school resource officer, Stephen Porciello, and so we start by the offense itself.
So what will typically happen is I'll come into work and I review all the reports that came in since the last time I was at work. If I see a report that there's probable cause to charge a crime and it has to do with a youthful offender, what we'll do as a team is me and Cindy will sit down, we'll discuss the report, we'll talk about the offender's background, maybe past offenses, maybe school discipline records, and then we'll make a decision as to whether or not we think this case will be better off going through diversion, through restorative justice, or straight to court. And then once we make the decision that it's going to go through diversion, Cindy goes ahead and writes up, Cindy calls the family. We get the family on board, and then I think Cindy can explain a little bit better the process of writing up a contract and what that looks like.
So there are kind of four components of our diversion process. So intake, so at that point, after Steve and I have decided that this would be a good fit for diversion rather than sending the youthful offender to court, I contact the family, and many times Inspector Porciello sits in with us and talks about the offense and what gave rise to kind of that behavior, and we start taking a look at whether or not the family and the student want to participate in diversion. If everybody is in agreement that this would be a better process under these circumstances, then we move forward to the commitment process. During that time, we really take a well-rounded look at the student, and we look at mental health issues, we look at educational issues, social issues, any familial issues, and we try to come up with a contract that is going to both hold the student accountable for their behavior and also take a look at some of the things in their life that might need some additional support. And the objective, of course, is to try to assist that child in not making the same mistake again.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for that. And so I hear you saying that long-term you want less youthful offenders making the same kind of patterns of behavior. So what I'd like to know is, what kind of questions do you ask when you're confronted with a certain offense as to whether it goes through the court proceedings or through the diversion program?
I think one of the things we look at is this a first-time offender? We look at the offense itself, and then we take a look at the circumstances of that child's life. So it's most youthful offenses, we're better off looking at something like diversion or restorative justice, because those processes for a child who is still in the developmental stages they're better off having the tools that are more impactful rather than just going to court, getting arraigned, and then being in touch with a probation officer who are wonderful and do wonderful jobs, but that they don't have a local connection. So we are looking at the child in a holistic manner, in a local manner, and trying to address some of the underlying issues that gave rise to the offense. We are very fortunate in Arlington that we're part of Middlesex County. We've got a wonderful juvenile court in Cambridge. The judges are very thoughtful around the juvenile process, and the probation department is wonderful. But we also know that when a child goes to court, that's actually an additional risk factor in their life once they've been exposed to court. So what I think Chief Ryan's intent was to try to keep the child out of court to begin with and see if we can put supports in place at the same time that we hold the child accountable, and try to put them on a different path.
And so does the diversion program affect their long-term record?
No, it doesn't. If a person isn't arraigned, they don't have a criminal record. So if they successfully complete the diversion process, so they participate in a meaningful way, they do everything that is expected of them in the contract that we've developed, and they successfully go through the process, then it's a fresh start for them.
That sounds awesome. I feel like even on a national level, starting to create the wave towards more holistic approaches to these offenses. And so speaking onto that, what kinds of offenses does this program support, and which does it not?
So I think most of the cases that we see here in Arlington that would go through diversion would have to do with drug or alcohol abuse, fights, physical altercations between students, in which one or two could be charged. Cindy?
So I think in general, because we've come so far in this idea of alternative forms of responses to juvenile offenses, and now we are fortunately involved with C4RJ in Concord and utilizing the restorative justice process, what we're finding more and more as the years go on is if there's a crime where there's not a stakeholder in the community or there's not a victim of a crime that wants to be involved in it, that is a more appropriate case for diversion. If there is an incident where there are stakeholders, there are victims of crime, and there's more harm to repair beyond the offender's family, then a restorative justice process is more appropriate. And generally when we're reviewing reports, that is pretty apparent to us, both by the nature of the offense and knowing the people involved. And one thing that we do really well in Arlington, and we've always done it well, is our collaborative work within our town, and also the work we do with the Cambridge courts. So we know our kids. We know our families. Inspector Porciello is based in the schools. He knows the students know him. I'm based in the schools as well, so I'm fortunate enough to know the students and know the families. So we go into it with a lot of information to begin with. It's also a nice way to actively look at juvenile offenders and give everybody the same chance and to have an even playing field for any offender regardless of what their background is.
And you say juvenile, is age a factor in this process at all?
It is, however, we do offer alternative justice to offenders who are under 21 years of age. Not only do we offer that, but the district attorney's office and their programs also offer that. Because we recognize that a person's brain isn't fully formed until they're 25 years old. So with that underdeveloped frontal lobe, people can make bad decisions that they may not make when they're adults with fully formed and functioning brains. So we want to take that into consideration for any of these youthful offenses. So when we use the term youthful offenses, we do always and have always in Arlington considered that under 21.
Cool, that's great to know. And just to wrap up, I just want to know if there are any misconceptions or assumptions made about this process as opposed to, or in terms of alternative court proceedings.
So my life and my job would be so much easier if every time there was a crime committed, I just filled out the paperwork and sent it off to court and likely never heard about it again. But that's not the goal here. We were all young, right? We know that younger people tend to make mistakes and do things they probably shouldn't do. And we don't want to affect their life path at such an early age. by being arraigned with a crime, that arraignment is going to stay with you forever. If it's a felony, automatically you're going to be ineligible for certain jobs down the road. So sending a kid to court really does that kid no positive. It's just nothing but negative. So I think one of the misconceptions is that this is easier than going to court, and that's certainly not the case. This is much more, you're much more involved in the process. Whereas if you go to court, the court kind of dictates the process, but when you go through diversion, the process doesn't move without you, without the offender. The offender has to be accountable. The offender has to show up at meetings. The offender has to do X, Y, and Z, or they're going to end up in court, right? And the goal here is to make this a learning experience for the offender, to give them a second chance, and to make the victim feel like some level of justice has been accomplished.
So once an offense is decided upon, who is eligible?
So if the youthful offender committed the offense in the town of Arlington, that individual is eligible regardless of where they live. In those cases, we will collaborate with other towns if they're in different schools or private schools in town. If it's an Arlington youth and they committed the offense in Middlesex County outside of Arlington, they'll be given the opportunity through the District Attorney's Office diversion program, and I will help manage the case and help support from Arlington. So it will kind of turn into a collaboration between the District Attorney's Office, the police department in the town where the offense occurred, and the Arlington diversion program.
Great, so those are all the agencies involved with this program?
The agencies outside for cases like that. Now, the agencies within the town of Arlington involved are the police department, of course. Superintendent Kathy Bodie really brought this program and institutionalized it for Arlington by bringing it into the public schools for somewhere for it to live. We needed from the beginning the school support if we're going to look at this in a holistic way, because we know that there are unidentified disabilities that can result in delinquent behavior. So many cases we have, through the diversion process, found that a student has an unidentified special education issue, a disability. We also work closely with public health and with Arlington Youth Counseling Center. So again, to focus on any mental health issues or any emerging mental health issues, and also to help do some family work. So in essence, the entire town of Arlington has collaborated really beautifully in making the diversion program a success and work for our youthful offenders.
That's amazing. And so for anyone that does want to get in contact with this program, who should they reach out to?
They could contact myself, or they could contact Cindy. I mean, we are a team. We work together. We talk about these cases together, every single one of them. So if I can't answer a question, hopefully Cindy can. And if Cindy can't, I know together we'll both be able to answer the question.
Great. Stephen Porciello, Cindy Sheridan Curran, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Niamh O'Connor, and thank you for watching.